And so the goal is to get them engaged with the concept and the emotional bonding of bringing value to people. And that's what that engagement actually opens up your child's eyes to the real possibilities down the road, right? So he didn't become a wedding photographer. It morphed into something very different. And he pivoted
in different areas along the way. And because of his personality, he was able to actually take this all the way across the U.S. and work for different individuals where he could do some drone work along the way, doing cell towers and stuff. So he got to experience the U.S. and sleep in the back of his truck because he preferred doing that.
That was not my dream job, but it was his. So he fully engaged.
He took full advantage of that.
Yeah.
And created that path as he went.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Jonathan and Renee Harris, who teach parents to find and develop their kids' passion. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote is from the Dalai Lama. Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. Today, we're going to talk about kids, and they definitely need your love and compassion. And they find their passion in knowing they're enough through your help. We've talked about this in the past, about how we program ourselves as kids and what causes problems as adults. So let's get it right with our kids. Before we continue, let's review last week's action step, which was to check out the video on difficult conversations and ask for what you want. The reality is, you may need to have difficult conversations with your kids after today's episode. So if you haven't watched it, good idea. I've spent a lot of time working with my kids to find their passions and helping them to launch into life. There's a million ways to do this, not just one. As part of this, I've been talking with the Harrises and their kids since before we started this podcast, which is a long time ago. Jonathan was on back in episode 16 if you want to go back and listen, and his son Simeon's been editing this podcast since the beginning. John and Renee Harris run parenttheirpassion.com, a website that teaches parents how to identify and develop their 12 to 16-year-olds' habits or talents and interests to create something remarkable and marketable. Their story begins with a farmer's market booth, a job layoff, and the decision to make sure their 9 kids have the ability to market themselves with the developed talent and skill set by the time they graduate high school. Let's meet my friends and see how they do it. Welcome back to Richer Soul, Jonathan and Renee Harris. It's great to have you join us again.
Thank you. It's good.
Hi, Rocky. It's good to be back.
It is, and it's been a long time. This is probably the biggest gap between someone's first and second appearance so far, because you were on way in the beginning of the show. A lot has happened in 5 years. Why don't you catch us up a little bit on what you guys have been doing?
Well, what's new is that Renee, my wife, was not on the show.
I was trying to remember, was I on the show?
I don't think you were. No. So 5 years ago, we did not have anybody who was out of the house yet. Is that correct? So of all of our young adults, we've got 5 out of the house and 18 and up. And at that time, I don't think anyone had graduated. Maybe he had. Well, no, because he's 24. So he would have been 17. So if he was out of the house, he had just left the household to work and live on his own. So since we last spoke then, we have 5 young adults out of the house. We still have 4 at home. And the ones that are on their own have their own livelihood, except for one daughter who is married and happily married right now and supporting her husband in his own business. So we'll see how that evolves with regards to the talent building. But the other 4, which are boys, are fully engaged with their talent building and their livelihood. And we can talk about that if you like, as to how it started in their youth. And then things pivoted, morphed, and kept growing and growing. And then when they left the house, they had just enough liftoff that they could continue pursuing that. So they didn't have to resort to other jobs that were not at all connected to their marketable talent. So they're able to continue after they left the home and pursue that and build a whole career on that. So that's just been actually mentally and intellectually, that was the plan, but now it's come to fruition. So,
and you never know, right? You plan all these things, but you don't know what the results are. And did your plan work until years later? And here we are years later. Now, none of them went off to college. They all started their own, I'm not going to say careers, but their own businesses and opportunities following their passions and the things that they had been practicing for years before they got to 18.
And one used that experience of those years kind of building up a portfolio to get the job that he wanted to get. And now he is actually and he's our second born, starting to become self-employed. But they did pretty much, other than Noel, 3 definitely went down the road of self-employment. One used his experience to get a job, and then our married daughter does some on the side.
Yeah, I think what's interesting that we've seen is that there's a lot more from a practical point of view, and that's actually advice that they got by listening to the same type of people, Rocky, that you recommend. But in the general advice is that while you are trying to start your own business, it's not a bad idea to go into employment with someone that you respect and admire, so that you're using that year of being paid to actually get free education. So that's especially with the second born one, that was more explicitly, I know he was self-aware of that. So he went to, when he was in our household, he was actually selling a lot of blades and he was enjoying that part of it. And then when he left the house, he used that portfolio to go and work for one of the best blade makers in the country that were pocket knives. While he was there, he got intimately familiar with the business side of things and the small batch production. And that really gave him courage to, in his mind, that he wanted to eventually run his own place. So then he used that experience to go then to with one of the best manufacturers in the Northern California area and got best practices there. He worked for some of the top people, and within a year, was it a year and a half? I can't remember how much time. He then decided to start his own business on the side, because also there's a non-compete clause. So he went to go, and this is, I think, pretty much unheard of, but he had built his network of professionals that he can now rely on, and also a network of other businesses that he knew from the other manufacturing places that give him small jobs for his new business. And there's some more stuff that he's doing on the side with it. So he's weaving in more in and out. He's much more predatory in that way, and very conscious of building relationships. So I would say more intentional than my firstborn. My firstborn was much more of a creative, a go-getter. And my secondborn, and this reflects different people's personalities, my secondborn is much more of a business networker in addition to being technical.
So things have also dramatically changed, I think, in the world over these past 5 years.
Oh, yes.
You guys have rebranded a little bit. Let's talk about that. What are you seeing different from the parent perspective these days?
And to back up just a little bit to catch people up in case they didn't hear the one 5 years ago. is that when we started, we noticed that starting your child on a talent or interest when they're around the age of 12 and then developing that so that by the time they are 18, 17, they have something marketable to get them either a job of their dreams or they can become self-employed this way, or even get into the college of their choice if that's their desire. But by having that kind of a nice runway under the parent's roof and taking advantage of different opportunities that the parent has and the family has, then you're developing those skills right alongside their education in school. So that's just a little bit of a background. So I think when we tried to explain this to people locally, friends and family, would understand that our kids are different than the average kid as far as like they would identify our kids by their talents, like
by their passion. Well, you would say they're super.
So you say like, oh, anytime someone's, maybe a little bit of an acquaintance, well, oh, the kid that does the coding. Okay, well, that would be our third born, Nicholas, very much into computer programming. He can pretty much troubleshoot almost anything, coding related on a website and he helped us a lot with little issues that we had in the business going along. And so he's the coder. They would say, oh, the daughter that does the art, they don't really always remember the name, but they remember the skills that the kids have. And that's how we developed it. We just decided early on, we noticed that was a real need. And that was how we started to parent the kids. We homeschooled, so that actually made it easier, but it's not a deal breaker. You don't have to homeschool to develop it. So when we describe these things to people who want to know, how did you do this? How did your kids get so good at their stuff that they're doing? Back then, I think it was just kind of unusual, but parents didn't see that as, oh, I should be doing this with my kid too. I think most parents back then would have been, oh, well, my kid's going to college, or I'm relying on the school system to educate my child, and then they'll go off to college and they'll be fine. It's not my problem anymore. They'll figure it out. Well, how many kids have come back to the home to live under their parents' roof because college didn't serve them well, or they were online for 2 years, or depression set in, or they just feel like there's no meaning in their lives. Whereas, because obviously we didn't see this coming 5 years ago, but thankfully the way we did things, parents are now a lot more desperate to make sure that their kids will have a liftoff by the time they turn 17 or 18. So now and we also have the proof that it worked for 5 of our kids out of 9. So we have a pretty good, so far it's got a pretty decent track record that it's going to be helpful. And so it's a lot easier to explain now. But what would you say as far as the world being different now?
Well, I think parents underestimate, and this is, I should give people hope, is that your kids can't find that something they get excited about in life, right? That drives you. I mean, nobody wants, I think the traditional route is you actually kind of lose your individuality after you graduate from high school, simply because people kind of go back, especially with regards to the college norm, they kind of get kind of averaged out. So like they kind of have a developing personality maybe in high school years because they're doing something, maybe they're the star football player or they're the goofy comedian in class. So they have a little bit of an identity within their social circle, the small social circle. But then when they go to college, it all starts over again. But now the stakes are higher. So they kind of, you kind of get washed in the sea. So maybe you're going to business school in an accounting program where you don't really stand out. You're not in the workforce. You're just trying to grind through. And some people could say, well, okay, that's just part of life. You have to grind. Okay, so fair enough. But the reality is when they get out, in fact, just yesterday, I was talking to a nice young man, a friend of the family, hadn't seen him in a while. We were talking. He's still probably 25, still trying to find his thing, So he's a hard worker, but he's never found his thing. And I'm just like, I feel for him. But kids can have that passion lit in them at an early age. Your child is not going to change like at 15 and all of a sudden he's 25. He's a very different person. He won't be. He'll be more mature. He'll be more experienced, more sophisticated, but you'll still recognize him. So there's no reason why he could not find something that will just really light him up and light you up as a parent.
Well, and I think the big thing that's happened is people are really starting to question the value of college. It has continued to go up and up in price, and a college degree is no longer a guarantee of a job. And so that's the other thing. And I think a lot of parents got to watch what was going on in the classroom for the first time, seeing their kids on Zoom and seeing the absolute in many cases, lack of a good, solid education being delivered and being able to pivot and being able to do all these things. And even the college landscape is changing, whether or not you need an SAT score and all of these other things that are happening. And then on top of that, education is so freely available now with the internet that you can learn, you can connect, you're no longer limited in that sense. And the kids who are doing well, I think, are taking leaps and bounds ahead. So that's really, if you're just following the traditional path, you're going to be further and further behind.
Yeah, I think it's a two-pronged thing. Is on the one hand, what's going on in the college realm is basically similar to an old industry, it's falling apart. So it served its purpose for a while, but now it's become a self-perpetuating thing. It's not really connected anymore to the outcome. So it kind of works in some cases. It's kind of vague. Sometimes you either people get chewed up or they come out with debt, or other times it works really well. So you get the star stories out of that, but it's getting old. And then at the same time, the alternatives are getting stronger and stronger. So you could argue, well, maybe it's falling apart, but that's just the way of life. But then there's no alternative. Well, the alternatives they just keep getting better by the month. I mean, literally better by the month. And so you're getting on both ends, you're getting a push from the new alternatives, and then the pullback from the college just not keeping up with it.
And that's true, because when you're in an ever-changing world, by the time the college comes up with a curriculum, it's already obsolete. And that's why I find it hilarious when people go to college to learn how to do social media. You're spending $200,000 to learn how to be an entrepreneur. Why don't you just start a business? Like, why would you go do that? It seems kind of silly. And most of the people who are teaching in these schools, depending on where you go to school, a lot of them may not necessarily actually have done the work. They're more studying the work, but they don't have hands-on experience in running a company or leading a company or doing social media in a way that something goes viral.
Yeah. And I think that now there are some private schools that are catching on a little bit with that. And so they're building these, micro businesses where they teach kids how to build a business. But sometimes it's the kids are to develop something that's really not related to something that they enjoy or like. So it's like a lemonade stand is great. Teach your kids how to run that. But how many are going to grow up and sell lemonade? No one. So why don't you start younger with something that they can actually, within a month or two, if they really throw themselves into it, or maybe that's already in, so many kids are taking music lessons. How many are actually delivering value out of that, bringing value to other people, even charging for it? No one. It's just they might perform in church, or they might play at a recital, which is not actually bringing value to other people. And same thing with sports. Like, for the amount of hours, time, and money, I can't even believe how much money goes into having kids in sports. What, at the end of the day, after years of that, other than team building, I get that, but what other skills can you actually bring and maybe even monetize? But if they start that sooner, they'll actually develop some of the skills. So I think some of the schools, our private schools, are kind of getting it, but it would be great if they could actually spend a little bit more time, find out how the kids are spending their time and what their talents and gifts are and interests, and then use that to start developing something.
So let's kind of take a step back. Let's just walk through a couple of examples. So your oldest is now, you said 24, 25. Where did he start? What were some of the things he did along the way, and where is he now?
He's our guinea pig.
So he if we were to choose one arbitrary moment, not that arbitrary, it was when his aunt gave him a digital camera. So this is more than a decade ago.
He was 12.
He was 12. So and this was a hand-me-down digital camera, and they had upgraded to a nicer one. So since then, the camera's gotten much better. And we had a small business that we were doing, and we needed to do product shots. Our product shots were not very good. And
it was just starting our business.
It was just starting.
So we didn't hire photographers yet.
So he had fun playing around with the camera, and we let him do that. That was not a problem. But, there's only so many videos you can do of your sibling pretending like they're falling down from the 3-story building because they can do these photo edits and stuff. And that's great. But we wanted to see something more productive out of that. So that's one of the concepts we came up with, is how can we channel this natural curiosity and interest, which was not a passion for him as such, but he had a natural interest. So could you help us use some of your skills with our immediate business? And so one of the first things he did, I don't even know if we really encouraged him that much as far as that was concerned, but he went to the local camera shop to get 2 lamps that weren't very expensive that we could use for taking pictures of our products. These are small products. And while he was there, he engaged a salesperson. And when they found out he was going to do some product shots, the guy said, well, let me give you a tutorial on how to take proper product shots. And so that started this engagement with the tools that he had and his interest into trying to become better at it. And this was the beginning of waking up a passion in him. So once he understood he could get better at something, bring value to us, right? He's only 12. So obviously what his parents think is important. And we were very grateful because right away the products got much better as far as the shots were concerned. So we gave him plenty of praise. And from there, I mean, he still enjoyed doing his boy stuff, but he started quickly understanding that he could bring value and happiness to other people, support the family, and his status was going up and up among his peers as to what he could do.
And then to continue that line, then he had access to a drone with not a camera on it. It was just a drone.
A drone. One of the early drones.
Yeah, a friend of the family gave him an old drone. So then he was enjoying working the drone, attaching his own camera.
He Velcroed it. There was no gimbals at that time.
And he became a lot more interested in drone and drone photography. And then eventually he worked his way into having a better camera that attached to it. He was able to even break into doing some drone shots for a local realtor. And this is way back before it became really popular. So he did just little drone shots, just static shots from the aerial view for some realtor and make a tiny bit of money from that. But that started to grow. And then he got better equipment. And then he found, just to fast forward a little bit, he then realized he loves videography and piecing the videos together and creating them so that they're in a short amount of time. So then he got into videography. So it continued to progress until he got to the point where he had his own website put up. He was hired by more and more realtors locally. He enjoyed that, but then he got hired on by a utility company that needed some drone footage and even a roofer. Remember, he did
He actually did a lot of other special one-off projects.
Lots of different projects.
Bigger and bigger.
And it brought him, 2-3 hours away. He was in the Bay Area. He also had to learn all the regulations. So he's learning as he goes. By the time he left the home, he had his own drone business where he's doing this full time. He had enough money to live on his own. That lasted a few more years until he found that what he really likes is managing the drone operators. So he does a lot more management of drone operators. He's hired by other companies to come to manage.
And data management, which is not something he started off originally thinking, oh, this is I want to do. But he got so into it that in order to take it to the next level, he embraced that, which is, by the way, part of this concept with your kids. It's like, you don't have to worry. And I think that's one of the fears, Rocky, is like, if you're thinking, oh, my kid's really into this, right? When I first got started, one of my fears, oh, he's going to become a wedding photographer. That's the only thing I could think
because
of.
Because
right?
he's into photography.
Yeah. And by the way, no dig on wedding photographers. They do a great job. In fact, they do such a good job. There's not much more room for people to come in, So as a dad, I'm thinking, oh, I don't want a son as a wedding photographer. That's going to be difficult. But the point here is that when you start your kid on something that he is organically, and organically, I mean by you're working with your environment, with the opportunities present, with his personality, with your parents' uniqueness of what they value in life, you have so many opportunities that can light your son or daughter up to find a passion in life. And so the goal is to get them engaged with the concept and the emotional bonding of bringing value to people. And that's what that engagement actually opens up your child's eyes to the real possibilities down the road, right? So he didn't become a wedding photographer. It morphed into something very different. And he pivoted
in different areas along the way. And because of his personality, he was able to actually take this all the way across the U.S. and work for different individuals where he could do some drone work along the way, doing cell towers and stuff. So he got to experience the U.S. and sleep in the back of his truck because he preferred doing that.
That was not my dream job, but it was his. So he fully engaged.
He took full advantage of that.
Yeah.
And created that path as he went.
And I think that's a big thing. Where they start is not where they end up. but you start taking steps forward and they're learning independence and they're learning to take care of themselves. And I think in today's world, more and more I hear, oh, the kids are anxious. They don't know what to do. They can't find a sense of purpose. All your kids are grounded and off doing and moving forward. And I think that's a bigger part of what this is all about, is letting your kids have agency in how they're going to do things and then creating the freedom. I mean, nowadays, everyone seems to be, the great resignation. They started off with, hey, we're going to build our own plan and being intentional up front and going forward. So now let's move on to the next one, right? Caleb followed. Now he started off making knives, which totally different than kind of where he's at today.
With this, he was able to develop his own Instagram account. We allowed him, and by the way, this is not us taking our knowledge and skill set and teaching it to the kids. We knew nothing about photography or drones. At Caleb, we know nothing about bladesmithing. But when you see those interests, then you allow them to start. They know where to go to find out how to get better. So as a parents, we're just there to say, no, you can't quite do that in the garage yet because you don't know all the dangers. But we do pull the people in if we know them, or if he comes to tell us, oh, I learned this on YouTube. We check it out, make sure it's good. And we're there to kind of guide, but we're not there to lead. Some of it's kind of self-driven, and then we're there to nix some of the ideas that might be a little bit too dangerous. But
and that's why we call it parent their passion. So you're not, and by the way, there is a difference between the two, because if you, and sometimes it works out fine, but if you're not letting your child just discover everything on their life, because that would be really, really rough. I mean, there's a lot of stupid stuff out there, or people are promising things that you as an adult right away, you can smell that this is a total fraud. So your kids could be susceptible to that. So you're more like a coach, right? The coach is there, like in real life. You're not going to go, if the coach sees you, I'm going to just jump off this cliff. They're going to be like, you're going to die, right? Sure. So, but we were there to see, you know what? There's probably a way for you to push yourself to the limits. We can see where the limits are, but we know you can go further. So you're parenting them. You're not abandoning them to whatever whim is out there, because you as a parent also can open doors for them. I think that's really important to keep that in mind.
And then we had a chiropractor who was very much into creating his own forge. So we tapped into that, and he helped Caleb along with creating something that he could use in the garage. And then he did get to the point where he was making his own knives. He built an Instagram account. He ended up with, I don't know how many followers after a few years.
I think he sold hundreds of blades.
Yeah.
And he was charging a premium price. Those knives were selling for a few $100s each.
Right. Over time, not the first one. But as he got better, he could charge more and he could customize them. And then he had to also decide, what do people want? What direction should I move towards? It's not necessarily that this will sell as well as that. So he kind of developed that over time. But then he also, because of the Instagram, he had this huge portfolio that by the time he did leave the house and he was able to go work for a knife making company, they didn't ask him, where did you go to college? That wasn't even on, I don't think that even came up.
No.
They saw that he's got this huge portfolio. He's been to the Bladesmith conference in Alabama, Georgia.
Several places, actually, more than one, but one big one out there.
He's proven, he's met lots of people. They know him. He knows all the big guys in the field, again, because he was young when he started, and he's showing that he's sticking with it, and he's teachable. Even these bladesmiths, they would send him stuff in the mail. I was shocked, like, they're giving you stuff for free because they're encouraging you to keep with your craft. And that was huge, that if he were to try doing that at age 35 and start, he wouldn't get that kind of good attention. No. He can't go crash on someone's couch to go to a conference where they're going to be showcasing knives. When he's 30, well, maybe you could, but if you had buddies. But when you're young, they give you so much attention, and these mentors will give you free attention because they see all that potential.
And that's very true. My kids got tremendous access to people and to mentoring that, if they were 30, they weren't going to get.
Right.
But at their young age, they did.
Seth Godin? Wasn't Seth Godin one of them?
Yeah, she met Seth Godin. She met a ton of other people. She had a tremendous, and my son got a lot of one-on-one coaching with engineers and job opportunities, which helped him tremendously to move forward. And so,
but when you're saying the coaching, what's interesting, I don't know how intentional it was at the time for us, but one of the things we became more aware over time is that coaching and that one-on-one contact with people who are much more advanced in the field. So not their peers, right? And so not teens, but you're being socialized into that field of talent. And that's important because when you're in that, you start speaking the language, and the language is not for fake purposes. There's always shortcuts in any field that you're in, because if you're able to use that language, that means you've been in it long. You notice the subtlety. So when people, when your teen approaches someone who is much more advanced, they can tell by the way your teen is talking that they have been in that context for a while. And they can tell by the language that they're using, because newbies will get terms confused. There are subtle differences. And you, most of the time, will only understand that as you're wrestling with trying to produce something. So this is important. It's not just the technical knowledge, but you're also socializing yourself into that world. So that's another thing too. Parents, I'm like, I know sometimes people feel like, well, yeah, but if I get my kid, involved in really what they're passionate, they're going to be cut off from their peers. They're not going to have a social life. That's not true, because once you go down that field, you're going to gain new people and new friends who are going to be super excited and welcome them in. So, if you're caught up right now in like a sport that you're really kind of indifferent about, but your biggest fear is like, oh, if I take them out of this, they're going to be all by themselves by the side of the road crying because no one loves them. That's not going to happen.
So Caleb started his own business now, right? He's on his own?
Well, he's still employed with another company, but he's also a couple months ago, he purchased a huge machine. You know the name of it.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's a big CNC machine. He paid cash. He's got very intimately knowledgeable how debt works and how businesses can have their big machines repossessed. He understands all the dynamics and what it involves. So he's already more than paid off the first machine very quickly. He's very
working
happy.
On his second.
He's now
one.
working on the second one that has more robotic stuff, so he doesn't have to sleep on a cot in the middle of the night to change things over, right? But he was willing to do that. He understood the progression. So right now, after he gets off work like at 4:00, he works another entire shift for himself.
He's also working in a place that they're allowing him to have his machine on in the same place as.
But he's renting. He's
renting. But as far as like having space, because it's a huge machine, they have a good agreement. He's a good employee for them, and then he gets to do this on the side as he's working too.
It's powerful. Little by little, you show up and you keep making improvements. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man Podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man Podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. Gideon is only 18, correct?
Yes.
And Gideon's actually in my mastermind group that I'm part of. So Gideon he is hanging out with men. I think, the next jump up, probably youngest, is probably mid to late 20s, all the way up to men who are in their 60s. Many of them were multi-millionaires. And he's building his business on his own, moved out of the house, taking care of himself. Let's talk a little bit about what he's working on.
Yeah, he was an interesting one because he was interested a little bit in the machinery. When he was 16, he got his first job. He was doing a lot of work for us in our business too. And at the same time, he wanted to go work for a guy who had a machine shop nearby. So a little bit similar to our second born, but he also found that he doesn't care for being an employee. He wanted to be self-employed, work his own hours.
And that's part of the discovery process, by the way.
And even with us, he spoke to us as a contractor more than as an employee. So something that we saw the light bulb went on is that he was so frustrated as an employee working for someone else by the fact that he could be a lot quicker and more efficient and get the job done sooner. And in his mind felt like, well, I should have the rest of the day off. I'm done. But he wouldn't get paid for those hours that he'd be finished with. So he thought, if I can get the job done sooner or have the tools to make it go quicker, then I should be paid accordingly. So he approached us with that too. It's like, Mom, and he did a lot of our shipping and packaging because we have an e-commerce business. And so I would have him do a lot of the packaging and shipping, and he wanted to kind of work around his own schedule. And we had an agreement. It's like, well, I will pay you by the project rather than by the hour. And I don't care when, you want to do the packaging and shipping, as long as it's by within 2 days of the order being placed. And as long as you're not in my way in the office, then we can work around. I don't care if you could work at 4 a.m, or you could work at 10 o'clock at night, or in the middle of the day, whatever you want to do. And you can have the rest of the day off. So he approached us with what type of pay and all of that. And that really helped him become confident in what his capabilities were. He also streamlined a ton of stuff in our business that I hadn't even thought of. And that was really helpful for us too.
And that's his superpower, is
yes.
creating systems and processes and streamlining operations. And that makes him instantly valuable to people.
And I don't think there's a college degree that is named for that.
There's not.
He developed that himself. And even to come up with his own business that he's doing now, we even have a hard time explaining what is your job? What exactly is your job title? Or what is it? We kind of know what he does, but he can see a problem, or he can listen to the problems that a business owner might have, and then come up with a solution on how it can be streamlined so that it's not the business owner having to deal with.
Well, and here's another tip, and we're very comfortable with this idea. And I think that one way to look at this whole strategy of developing this kind of marketable talent and passion is to understand that your child, like when we're talking about Gideon, it's not like we're going to say, okay, here's his label that he's going to be as an adult doing this career. Because of course, if you put a label on, first thought that comes into your mind, it's like, oh my goodness, nobody in their right mind should put him in charge because he's way too young and he doesn't understand, which is true, right? But if you start with small projects, small things, then your child has a time to engage. And I think his break came in because he got to use a particular piece of project management software. I think it's called Monday.com. And so it's not like he's running other people's business. He was actually helping people using that project management software. So he could really niche down. And I don't think he does too much with it these days. But there's always an entry point. And if you start with something super small, this is why you want to start young, then your child has the time to figure out, I really love this. I want to amp it up to the next level. Or they say, you know what, that was okay, but I'm discovering I'm really good, or I really want to develop these other skills. And that's why you have time to organically develop. So that I think that some of the anxieties people have is like, oh, my kid says he wants to, drive a semi truck. Well, are you going to put your 14-year-old in the spot of a semi truck? You're going to say, well, no, that's absurd, right? So what's that in between step? And that's what you have to do as a parent and child together, is like, what's that before you drive that semi truck, which you think that's, your ideal career? What can you do in between time to get you closer to that? So whatever that thing you're going to do, right? Maybe it's just washing the trucks, who knows? Then you're gonna get a taste of that environment. You're gonna find out what it's really about, or you're gonna find something that's, you thought it was trucks, but it's really something else. It sounds close to it. Then you have time to discover that, and you and your child can have time to discuss that and really figure it out, because we don't know. And one of my best things I love to say as a dad, probably more as a dad, like my son will come to me and say, Dad, I don't understand how this thing works. Where does it go? And this is related to their talent. And I'll say, honestly, I don't know. Find out and let me know. I love saying that. That's like, to me, it's because you're on the cusp of discovering something. And that discovery might just be, let's stop, let's go no further down this road, because this is really not something he wants to do. But now he knows. Or it's like, you know what? I never thought of it. In order for me to cross over this bridge, I'm going to have to take this little mini course, or I'm going to learn this little tutorial. And then they're excited to do that. Whereas previously, there was no drive and desire to even do that. And I think that's what's exciting.
And so I think that's a big thing. You are not pulling your kids. The kids are pushing you, saying they want to go do things. So that is a big mindset that you have to keep in mind. This isn't about you pushing your kids. It's about your kids pulling you forward and being able to do that. And I know just within the group, Gideon's got lots of people who are providing him opportunities. He's helping people build their businesses, finding different things, and he'll pivot his way through. I mean, he's only 18, so he has plenty of time to do that. But he's also networking with people who are playing at the top of their game. So he's building a massive, massive network that he can use to help him find opportunities and do more things.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, too, that because he had enough, small as it is, right? He had enough skill in that space that he wants to be in, that when he left home, he had the option of not working as a barista in the local coffee shop, right? So had he not had those skills that would pay him a little bit of money, yeah, of course he would have to work as a barista or whatever the equivalent is, right, to put food on the table. So it's not wrong. But at that point, if you're spending all your time doing that, you're no longer working directly on that core skill set that you want to develop. So that's one of the big advantages too, is that if you can get that passion going earlier than the last year of high school, now your child has real option. I'd like to throw you, if you had a child that's like, you know what, I want to make surfing my livelihood, right? And if your child were to tell you that at 18 and they have never been at the beach, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a bum who's going to go to LA and we're not going to hear from him for 10 years because he's sleeping on the beach, right? There's no means of livelihood. He can't get married, whatever. But if you live nearby and you started this when you're 10, 12 or 14, then all of a sudden you realize there are hundreds of opportunities related to the surfing world that don't even involve being a celebrity surfer, right? There's all the peripheral stuff that support it, everything from photography to running a surf shop to designing boards to creating logo wear, the whole stuff that goes with that. You have an amazing ramp up. If somebody tells you that when they're 12 or 14, you realize it may not be exactly the celebrity surfer thing, but if they stay in that field long enough and you're looking to create value, there's a good chance that they'll probably make it. But when they say that at 18, you're like, oh my goodness, just go to college and get a reality dose.
And I think that's the thing. People think you go to college, it's all going to work out. But more and more, if you don't have the money, you're getting yourself into some not too great situations. Now, the one that I probably know the least about is Nicholas.
Yeah, he's our coder. So he's the one a lot of parents are dealing with. All my kid wants to do all day is play Minecraft or do the gaming from the chair, whatever. And so that would have been our Nicholas. But we also noticed, even when he was younger, he was always taking things apart. He'd love to take the cameras apart, put them together. So even as a little kid, that was him. Now I see it, fast forward, I can see why he loves to take things apart and put them back together. He's great at troubleshooting. So when the kids come and say, can I play Minecraft? And we're kind of realizing, okay, this is not...
It's consumption oriented.
This is one thing we preach on too, is teach your kid to be a producer, not just a consumer. So when he would play all these hours of Minecraft, Jonathan started to ask about ways that he can actually bring value to the other players. And so within a few months, he was deciding that, maybe starting with creating the skin of the Minecraft. I'm not sure all the terms, but that's something that you can do, is create something. Somebody else wants what you just made and you can share that. Then later it was to make the game better. Minecraft allows you to create plugins. So now you can actually improve the game for everybody if there is a plugin. And then he noticed, people will come back and say, oh, can you do this? Can you make it do this? And can you make it do that? Now all of a sudden his skills are starting to increase. He's becoming a valuable member to the game. He doesn't care as much about just playing the game, but even making it a better experience for everybody else. And so we just kept building on that and building on that. So he had to learn more about coding and creating, and that just started to really... and
he started interacting with other programmers who are a little bit more advanced than him. Mm-hmm. And then he got socialized, there's that word again, socialized into how you manage the updates. And then he realized that he wanted to go to the next level. And then this required cooperating with other programmers. And so now you had to have GitHub and all these other things, which I'm not very familiar with. And then he started going into those tools. And then once he was in that space, he got approached by programmers that were working for actually for-profit Minecraft server groups. And one of the big issues, that was one of his big, quote, professional, we just only got paid a small amount of money, was they were trying to to crack down on the number of false logins, because they would ban kids anyways. It's all part of the thing, part of their business model. And so they got a team together of programmers, and he got roped in to help support one minor aspect of it. And then that's when things really started getting more into hardcore programming. And when he got a taste for that, it was just take off from there. And he learned the languages he needed to do. He learned the socialization. So Minecraft kind of fell and disappeared out of view. But it was his entryway into real production.
And then a couple of years later, he actually got hired on, not hired because he's actually a contractor, but he does work for a WordPress maintenance for, what would you call
developer
it? Developer. And he and a couple other guys who they have their own separate businesses, work together to create different pieces of the WordPress plugins. I think it's a plugins.
Well, there's several aspects to it. Again, the title is not entirely clear.
Stuff. I'm not exactly.
It's outside of our zone of comfort.
But he also but by having that was a nice leap for him, because then he got in contact with a lot of other bloggers using WordPress who need different things done to their website. So now he's hired on for different projects, and usually it's an ongoing basis that they hire him on to do. And even with my being on a e-commerce site like Shopify, I can say, hey, this is acting weird. My store is doing this little weird thing. Can you go in there? And he has no problem finding the problem, figuring it out, and fixing it. And even though that's not his expertise, is to be an e-commerce Shopify person, but he has those capabilities of knowing where to look and figuring things out on the back end and seeing the problem and then fixing it.
And Rocky, this is also going back to, you mentioned that you don't know as much about him. And part of the reason, and this fits partly his personality, he is a quiet person. Mm-hmm. He does not mind spending hours analyzing something. A lot of people don't have that patience. Like, maybe they're mentally capable, but that's not their idea of fun. He actually genuinely enjoys it. And so, as quiet as he is, one time when he was still under our roof and as a team, we went to a conference where a lot of developers went. So I went as a dad, as part of parenting their passion, right? Plus I wanted some excitement and see some stuff. So I went with him, and I thought a WordPress conference. And when we were there, I was more concerned as a dad. Well, I hope he gets a chance to interact with people.
Hopefully he won't be too shy.
Won't be too shy. I was like, once he landed in that environment, there were people my age, business owners. He was just interacting with them.
Tribe.
He found his tribe. He had no problem at all. And so I think that's one of the exciting things too, as a parent, is that you realize that you're not necessarily his tribe. You're his parent. You're his friend in that way. But it's exciting to see organically as your child develops and finds a way to fit in that world. When he meets with those people, some of your worries kind of disappear because he just clicks. These are analytical people, right? They love to talk about that. And he had no problem.
So a couple takeaways. One, as parents, we don't have to know how to do it. It doesn't even need to be in our zone at all. You just got to find them the opportunities to learn. Two, and I see this, I think, with a lot of kids, even if you're in a big high school, you're still in a pretty small place. And as you start to get out into these areas, you just don't get the exposure in the high school, and you don't have the time in high school to even play in these realms. But when you start getting out, the world accepts you. Like, if you know the language, they don't care about all that other stuff. And I think that's a big shift for parents to get over. Like, I hear so often, I want a certificate, I want this, I want that. The pieces of paper in today's world are becoming more and more irrelevant. Actually doing the work and showing you can doing the work is what's most important. And, with online businesses, you can put anyone's picture up front. They don't know. And you can be a kid behind the scenes making a killing, doing all of this kind of stuff. And there are a ton of them that are doing just that very thing. My son spent a lot of time playing video games. We said, hey, if you're going to play video games, figure out how to make money. And he did. And those skills landed him a internship this summer with one of the biggest tech companies out there. And he got paid very handsomely to go work out there. And they covered all of his expenses and everything else. So he's got one more year left of college. He took that path. However, he will graduate college at 20. So he won't even be allowed to drink and party. but he'll be way ahead of the curve because we knew that was the direction he needed to go and what he wanted to do. And honestly, I tried to talk him out of it because I think he could have done this faster on his own without the college than going through the college. But, they're all afraid to kind of let go and take that.
Well, in the case, Rocky, what I know of your son is that his portfolio was overwhelmingly powerful. I mean, no matter which way you look at it. I mean, if I was an employer, it wasn't just that he had the academics down that you would expect someone interested in the robotics field and everything related to that, but rather he had massive hands-on portfolio, the kind of person that, whatever the problem is, he's got grit. So that's another aspect too. I think that people want to see. It's not just that, do you understand mentally what this field of talent is, but rather, are you the kind of person that's not going to fall apart when things don't work out in that area? And you have such a passion and love, you're just going to keep pounding away. I think that's what a lot of people want. And your son, his portfolio was just, by the time he was 15 or 16, I mean, really, that's what companies want to hire. And the rest of it, you can figure out after. And his portfolio was just overwhelmingly strong and just powerful.
And he got an opportunity to work for a local engineering company when he was in high school. And literally at the end of his first internship summer, which I forget, it might have been at the end of junior year of high school, or it might have been the end of sophomore year, probably junior year, because he had to drive there, I guess. The comment was, he's got the skills of a graduating college engineer as far as hands-on, being able to design and actually create the products and put them all together. So that was phenomenal for him. And that's why we're big believers in all of this. We also let our kids follow their passions. My daughter took a very meandering route. Like, I didn't expect her to end up where she did. I thought she would go in other places, but she learned, I do like this. I don't like that. Even though she was good at things, she learned, but I don't want to do it. And so that was kind of good for her as well. So let's touch base on one of the younger ones, because he's been with me since he was 11. He's been editing this show for the past 5.5 years, and he's continued to grow his talents.
Yeah, we decided with him, how young can you start with a child? If he were in public school, he'd probably be in drama. So he showed a lot more interest in voice acting early on, and so he dabbled a little bit with that. Well, more than dabbled. He actually even later put up stuff on Fiverr so he can get some gigs there, and he's doing that. He still does that now. And then along the way, the whole podcast editing came into play. And he's very much the type that loves to just go look up things and how to make things better and how to use all the software that he uses. He will just go and look on YouTube and find a lot of answers that way. And along the way, we also did have, I think we had one or two kind of mentor type coaches to help him a little bit with the voice acting back when it was that. So between the podcast editing, the voice acting, his other love is video editing. So he'll do a lot of those three in different ways and earn some money from each of them. So he's now 16, just got his driver's license just the other day. So he is now, the world is opening up, and he sees what his brother, Gideon, who we talked about, was the first of ours to move out of state, several states away. And so he's thinking, I want to go where Gideon is. And he can, because he's making money from home. So it's not going to make him have to live in a particular place. He can pretty much take off and live where he wants to. He's been able to start early. There was a little bit of what's difficult if you start too early is it takes a lot more hand-holding by the parent. And I think we discovered that with him, like maybe just let kids develop and just kind of pursue some things. But
Rocky, to your point earlier, they're not leading enough at that age. And I think some of it, in a way, it should give you some relief as a parent too, right? I think there really is a nurturing phase of childhood, and it's okay to be in that. And that's at that age, they see something on TV, they want to become that. The next day they see something else. So you don't get too worried about that. That's okay. It's part of the discovery process, and you can have conversations. If you push really hard on a talent, like a real marketable talent, we have found that if you try it sooner, nothing bad is going to happen. It's just you as a parent.
You end up doing a lot more.
You do a lot more.
It's like when you do the science projects in school.
Yes,
and,
exactly. So you're the one doing the work, not them. Mm-hmm. And it seems like if you just wait a little bit later, you catch up anyway. So I think you can relax a little bit, and they just don't have that hormonal drive. But later on, when it's actually when your kid starts getting a little ornery, and it's because they have a drive to want to do something of their own. They can't quite articulate, but you can see it coming on. At that point, mom's hug and dad's approving glance does not work anymore. They want outside affirmation. That's a sign you can start revving it up. And so you need to channel that, of course, right? But
that's why age 12 is really a nice.
Yeah, or age 12, give or take, around that age, it's really when it's going to start paying off. They're going to pretty much, if you don't do something, you will, you're going to have to stay on top of that as a teen. Everybody knows that. You can remember being a teenager.
And once they start making money on the things that they are getting good at, that money just gets put right back into what they're developing. So even with Simeon, we're talking about Simeon, with him, he wanted better equipment. He wanted a better microphone. He wanted the gaming chair. He wanted, all of the little things that made his environment more comfortable or boosted things and made it go faster, sounded better. All of those things were very concerning to him, but he knew he had to do the work in order to, because we didn't fund their talents. These are all ways they have to earn their own money, and
they respect what they buy.
Yes.
They will research it, because if you just pay for it all.
If it breaks, they expect you to replace it. And now he knows he has to have enough of a buffer. He has to have money set aside in case his equipment breaks down. If something happens to his computer, he has to have something as a backup, because people like Rocky are depending on him to get the job done.
So shifting gears a little bit, a big part of what you do now is helping other parents to do this with their kids, to figure this out and help them essentially parent their passions, right? So let's talk about it. What exactly are you doing these days?
So what we're doing now is we have also discovered that the more ownership that the kids bring to the table, the easier it is for the parents as well. So we created a short workshop, and it takes kids through a series of short self-discovery videos. And we have a whole process. So there's list building involved, where you start with what's your just basic interests. That's usually where that's easy for people to start with. Well, my kid's interested in soccer, or my kid loves to fix bikes, or my kid loves to take apart things and put them back together. The beginning is just a list of those basic interests. Sometimes it's a talent. Sometimes he's really good at algebra. It could still be something school related, but starting with those interests is the first step. So we take the kids through that. They make a list. And then the second one is to then find the tools and resources that your family has available. And maybe it's an example we like to give, because one of my personal favorite pieces of software online is canva.com. So anybody who might be just a little bit artistic, or they want to put together like an invitation to a party, or you could do so many things on Canva. You can actually create your own presentations and so on. So maybe you have a sister who is really experienced with using Canva, who can teach your daughter how to use that. That would be under the tools and resources. Or you have a neighbor who fixes cars in his garage all the time, and your kid is very interested in cars. That would be a tool or a resource. And take over.
Yeah, so you're looking at your environment, right? So we're talking about a young teen. So you're being realistic. And this is part of the process of helping you scope down or niche down to something that's doable. So a lot of times people get stuck. They have these either no ideas at all, or when they start coming up with ideas, or they're on the scale of, I want to become an astronaut at NASA, and you don't even live close to Florida. So you have these two extremes. So what you're doing here is by listing not only the personal interest, which is really obvious, but the tools and resources. They're the ones that your family has true access to. They're not ones that are in another state or outside of your household's budget. So that's really good. The final piece, which is really the most fascinating part, if you take this workshop, it's going to really open your eyes up as a parent, is your family identity, or another way to put that are those activities that define you as a family. It's typically the ones that your friends and the people around you would say, oh, Rocky's family is this kind of family.
They're known for this.
They're known for this, right? So it may or may not be related to the type of work that the parents do, but most often it's not. But it could be, maybe the family's really into computers or they're really into something else. And that, once you identify that, and that one sometimes stumps people because they swim in that ocean all the time, they can't see themselves. But we teach you how to have a little self-awareness. And it's a very short list. Once you know what that is, that's where your child can start bringing value. So you're not trying to clone your child to be whatever it is your family is, but rather you're giving an opportunity for your child to immediately, I'm talking about within a week or two, immediately start shining and showcasing just even the smallest skill that they have with the tool in your environment to bring an enhanced experience for your family. So now your child is a hero to your family. This is important as a teen, right? They're not out there being a rock star. They're only 13 or 14. They need this immediate feedback of bringing real value, not fake value to the family, but real value with something that's uniquely suited to their personality and abilities. That's the workshop, by the way. So a lot of times we've found that we've had, there's bigger things you can do, but that's really where you start. And so that's what we're offering right now. If they go to our website, at the top, there's a purchase button, and then it's called the 1-hour workshop, How to Find Your Passion Early for Teens. So actually, this is a little bit different. We decided to address it directly to the teenager. Parents totally listen in on it because we actually recommend they go to the parents to fill out some of these forms. But it's very dynamic. Renee and I both do it. So you have proof that mom and dad both approve of this method. And we call it a 1-hour workshop. Actually, the total viewing time is 30 minutes, but you're supposed to pause it
quickly.
They can go through it quickly.
And one thing that we've learned from the parents and from the kids who have taken it, we've gotten some feedback, is the kids are like, oh, I didn't even know I had these other interests. Actually, it's a lot of times it's the parents will say, I didn't know that my kid was interested in this until they went through the workshop. I had a mom even say, I kind of want to go through this for myself. Can I answer it for myself? Because my kids are starting to leave the home and I need an identity. I need to start doing something. So it's really because for us, it's think outside the box. And that's one thing that as we get in conversations, we've had a lot of Zoom calls with parents. And as we get into conversations with the parents, we start to hear their stories and we'll say, wait, did you just say that, you and your husband have just flipped homes, like 3 homes in the past 5 years? Why isn't that on the list? These are like things that, or that the family has adopted 3 of their kids. Well, there's a lot of parts of a family that parents don't really think about as far as what makes basically it's the things that make their family different, unique compared to other families. And that definitely plays a part in the whole list building part of it.
And I think that's a big part of it. And I know a lot of people on the real estate side, and many of them will have their kids be involved in some way in their businesses and just learning the different things and teaching them the skills. The reality is, in the world of real estate, you don't need a college degree. It doesn't matter. And honestly, even in the world of computer and programming and all of that, you really don't need a college degree. It's quite amazing how many things you can do and how successful you can be without following all of those types of things. So I think it's definitely worth it. I think the biggest thing is parents need to realize that there are more paths than there have ever been in the past. In the old days, we had to do things a certain way, but today, not necessarily the only path to success. There are multiple new ones.
And even as for realtors, like people who are self-employed, there are so many little tasks in that business that your child might have a gift for even doing spreadsheets or even doing photography or videography, or even speaking in front of a camera or editing. There's so many we learned that with our business. I would not have expected that I'd have a son who could actually build shelving in our office so that products are super streamlined and easy to package. I mean, just little things like that I think parents might think, well, I have to have my kid do the thing that a 13-year-old is capable of doing, which means stuff envelopes. Well, that might not be his passion. Maybe they can do something else that they're actually really interested in that you didn't even think of that could actually help you in your business out. So once you kind of think outside the box especially, I think self-employed parents have an advantage. And so as do homeschooling parents too, to being able to find those opportunities under their own roof.
Stuffing envelopes gives them a little motivation to go learn some new skills.
You look for something else. Yeah.
It always works. once again, just share with everyone if they'd like to learn more about your programs and what you have to offer. How do they find you?
So go to Parent Their Passion. There's 2 T's in Parent There. So parenttheirpassion.com. Get on the main page. Right there on the main page, you can put your email. And as soon as you put your email in, you will get a self-discovery workshop, a PDF version.
Well, this is the free version.
This is the free version. It's entirely free. You can take it down and you can walk through that. And so that's the equivalent of doing it yourself instead of doing the 1 hour workshop. 1 hour workshop is a lot more dynamic, of course, and we'll give you other examples, but you can download the first one. The advantage of doing that right away is you will get newsletters, emails coming in, and each one of them gives you a very practical tip on how you can get started. So I think the first one starts off with the dreaded iPhone, and it shows you, we found a commercial that just completely captures this idea. And so you're going to get through a series of emails, you can just follow that and just be inspired. If you can just come away with one idea from that thing, it's really going to change the way you look at how you provide an opportunity for your child. So again, you don't need to be homeschooling. You don't need to be self-employed. You could do this after your regular school hours. And you're going to see so many opportunities just come alive by just reading the newsletter. So I hope you get to go there, because we also have some videos down below. There's a video page where we do tons of interviews.
You can see what our kids are doing. So we probably need to even update that all the time. But what each of our 5 kids who are not living with us anymore, how they've developed their skill sets. And in the workshop, if you want us to take over a little bit with the kids, get your teenager involved, we recommend 12 to 16-year-olds take that one. And that gets them jump started on starting to think about the talents that they could start developing.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing, and we'll encourage people to go check it out.
Thank you, Rocky.
It was our pleasure. Thank you for letting us come on board.
If you have kids or know people who do, this works. It's a great way to motivate kids to get an early start in life, make money, save massive amounts on college, avoid college debt, and actually enjoy their lives. It works. I know Jonathan and Renee, and I've met their kids. I've referred them to my clients. This is a viable alternative path in an ever-changing world. Check out their website to learn more. If you know of other parents this could help, would you please share the episode with them? They and their kids would appreciate it, and I thank you. Next week, we have on Vitalia Katzenelson to chat about getting your soul in the game. Have an abundant week.